Like I said, welcome to the workshop. My name is Jason Slabotsky. Now, I'm part of the UTeach computer science team at the University of Texas at Austin. Go Longhorns. Just kidding. You can tell by my accent that I am not from the state of Texas. Nope, I am a New Yorker. I have 15 years of teaching experience in New York. Uh, about 8 of those, maybe closer to 9 of those years, was in New York City Department of Education. Um, and then I took a job 6 years ago coming to work for the UTeach team. Now, we are a not for profit organization inside the University of Texas, but what we do straight up is we create curriculum for computer science courses. Specifically, we have an AP Computer Science Principles course, an AP CSA course, and next year we're releasing our Foundations of Cybersecurity course. But don't worry, this is not a commercial, okay? I am here because the create performance task is important. And since I've been here for 6 years, for 5 years in a row, I said, hey, can I do a create task workshop, not just for our licensed teachers, but for anybody, not people just use UTeach, but anyone, if they use code.org, if they use CodeHS, because there's just a lot of teachers out there who can use help with this create performance task. And for 5 years, they said no. All right. Finally, this year, they said, sure, you can do this. And this has been really successful. All right. Including this group, probably have trained about 300 teachers in this workshop. We've had some special guests along the way. We'll talk about that too. So that's the workshop. All right. Well, if you just want to watch my recordings, I'll be sending out the recordings after this is all over to everybody. You can just watch my recordings to learn more about it. But if you attend both Zoom sessions and complete the asynchronous activities, you'll see in a minute when I share the link to the workshop with you, you can get 5 hours of credits for attending this workshop for free. All right, so that's pretty important too. Our session is today at 3 o'clock and then next week again at 3 o'clock. And next week will be a little shorter. It'll be about 15 minutes shorter. There's just less to cover. So what are we going to be talking about here? Okay, we're going to be talking about a number of different things. We're going to be talking about best practices for the create performance task. I'm going to share with you the UTeach create performance task module. You're going to have access to what we give our licensed teachers, not in Codio, our digital platform, but as PDF. So if you want to do exactly what I show you to do in this workshop, you'll be able to do it with the PDFs I share with you next week. All right, so that's the first thing. Okay, the next thing is I'm going to talk about the proper uses of AI and then how to use AI to not only improve your student code, but to improve your students' written responses. Okay. The biggest problem on the create performance task is the actual responses, the written part. It's very difficult. Kids can make up a program. They can do the video. They can take all their code snippets. But when they have to talk about their procedure now and their list and their algorithm, man, these questions are challenging. But I'm going to show you how to use AI to improve your students' written responses so that they can use AI to practice to improve. All right. And like I said, if you're interested in those 5 hours of CPE credit, please go right ahead and attend both these sessions and then do the asynchronous module that I have for you this week. All right. And I'll send you a certificate of completion next week when we're done with everything if you want that 5 hours. All right. So not to take up any more time, but I put a little bio about myself. I told you I taught in New York City. Back in 2016, I was voluntold to teach AP CSP because I was the most qualified teacher in my building. I knew the Wi-Fi password, and my principal was like, hey, you're going to teach this course. But I had a great time learning about it, a great time teaching it. My students won the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow contest. So if you have never done the Samsung contest, do it. It's a great opportunity for your students. And you will get sample materials from UTeach. We are slightly better than our competitors, code.org and CodeHS, based on our results on the AP CSP exam. And I'll talk about why it's important to be a little bit better. But I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at home, and I do all our teacher support and professional development. So if you have a question about our CSP course at any time of the night, just send me an email and I'll answer it for you. Even though you're not my licensed teacher, I want to help you with the create performance task anyway. All right, now I want everyone to join the workshop. I am going to drop in the Zoom chat box right now the link to join the workshop. All right, if you can click on that link, it'll ask you to provide some information. And I am going to stop talking for 1 minute and give everyone an opportunity to do that. So please take the opportunity right now to join the workshop. So just real quickly, this is the Codio platform. This is where our course is housed. You're going to experience Codio in this workshop as a student, the way your students would. Like again, not a commercial, but I love the Codio platform. We actually have our IDE for Python for our CSP course built into Codio. No replit, no sharing of links, no extra fees. Um, Same thing with Scratch. We don't use the online version of Scratch for our block-based language. We have Scratch embedded in Codio, so students can't remix. In our Python IDE, we have code playback, and also students can't. We have behavior insights, so students cut and paste code. It'll tell us what code they cut and paste. So you'll be able to try it out as a student, though, in my workshop right now. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Okay, you should be seeing what I just popped up on my screen right over here. All right. We are going to be going over this in today's session. Then this is the asynchronous module for you to complete on your own time if you're interested in those 5 credits. And then here's what we'll be talking about next week. All right. So let's get into it. So I already welcomed you to the workshop. You're into the workshop. Now, I always like to start out the workshop by doing a deep dive into the Chief Reader Report. Now, in last month's workshop, I had Mark Emery on with me. We did a fireside chat. It was like 15 minutes long. He is the Assistant Chief Reader for the APCSP Create Performance task. So he came on and he reviewed with me pretty much what I already have listed here, and that is, where do the students struggle the most on the Create Performance task? Okay, that's pretty much what we need to know. If we know the pitfalls, then we could prevent them from making it. And here's why it's so important. Okay, and I'm just going to collapse down this side of the screen and just focus on the actual report here. Okay, CSP. It is like the most popular course right now for College Board. 175,000 students have taken it. All right, now they have 680 teachers who read this exam, who grade it, and you could do it remotely from home. And I'm telling you this right now. I used to be an AP reader, and the reason why I can do a workshop like this is because I became a reader, not for the money. The money's okay, but because it's the best PD you can ever attend. You learn how to grade the Create Performance task. That way, when you go back and teach it to your students, you know exactly what to tell them. And that's what I'm going to tell you. Because the misconception is that this Create Performance task should be like the best project they do for the entire year, the highlight, the pinnacle of all their coding skill and knowledge. Nonsense. This program needs to have a list. It needs to have a procedure that passes a parameter. It has to have input and output. Okay. And it needs to do 2 things. And guess what? Those 2 things, one of the things can be not working. So, like, for example, if I build a temperature analysis program, clearly I'm supposed to enter in a number, right? Temperature. So, what happens if I type in the word dog? Well, the program shouldn't work. If, like, the 2 test cases your students talk about on the written response is 84 degrees and the word dog, and when they typed in 84, the program did what it was supposed to do. But when they typed in dog, it didn't work. That's actually considered 2 things. Okay. So the idea that this project needs to be like the second coming of The Legend of Zelda, all right, or the next Mario, release to compete with Nintendo. Okay. Um, Taylor, good question. Just it doesn't need to be that advanced. Taylor, I agree with you. It should at least say something like, hey, this doesn't work. You need to type in an integer or a number value. Okay. College Board doesn't even make them do that, right? They don't care. If it just type in dog and nothing happened, they're going to take it as a win for your students. So that's what I wanted. That's why we're here. That's what we're talking about here. All these little things that can push your students' score slightly higher. Because here's why. They have 680 people reading this exam. For the sake of Mark Emery, I promised him I do this. Google become an AP reader, sign up, do this remotely if you really just want to get away from your family. They can do it in person in Kansas City, Missouri. But most people just grade it remotely. It's all good. All right. So become an AP reader. I promised Mark I would give him a pop because they need people. Okay. They have 680 people, and guess what? It's not even enough. They need more. All right. But here's the distribution of the scores for the AP CSP exam. 3, 4, and 5 is passing. Okay. No, it's never too late to sign up, Taylor. You can sign up like today. They're desperate. They're going to take anyone. A few years ago, they were more, I'm not going to say it was more challenging. They just wanted people to have more experience. Now the numbers are exploding. They just need people to do it. All right. But 3, 4, 5 is the exam score that gets your students the credit they need for college to get that one college credit. But take a look at this. 36% of the people who take it, the students get a 1 or a 2. Okay. Now that's 3% higher than it was just 3 years ago. So even though more kids are taking the exam, which College Board loves to count, okay, straight out, more percentage of students are not passing it. And here's the other thing, and this is why I'm happy you guys are here with me for this workshop. The global mean, the average, is actually not passing. It's a 2.90, where the exam score for passing is a 3. So that means just knowing a little bit more about the create performance task, knowing a little bit more about how to do the written response, okay, is basically how your students are going to be able to get the credit they need for this exam. All right, how many multiple choice questions should they get correct out of 70? Um, that I don't know. All right, I can follow up and answer that question next week. Um, I have a document from my teachers. I don't know how well it would be for you guys, but I mapped the 2021 practice exam back to our curriculum. So I can tell my teachers what assignments are actually tested and which ones aren't going to be tested on the exam. So in case they need to adjust their pacing, they can do that. But I will get the answer for that next week, Aisha, I promise you. I'll find out from my people. Okay. All right. Now, what do I want to talk to you about the create performance task? Okay. There are 6 possible points that your students can get. All right. And the funny thing is that it's like night and day. They do really good on the first 3 scoring rows. Okay. The video, the program requirements, and the written response 1. All right. Out of 1 point, they get almost the full thing on the video. And you can see they're high up there. Okay. So that's important. All right. And just to clarify, okay, the project video, and we'll talk about this in a minute. The project video has to show the input and the output and the program running. Now, let me tell you something else your students should be doing. The video should be showing the test cases they're going to talk about in the written response. So, in other words, if I'm making that temperature analysis program and I'm going to type in 78 degrees in the word dog, all right, then I want to show in my video me typing in 78 degrees and the program functioning, and me typing in the word dog and it not functioning. Or if our students try a little harder, it says doesn't work. All right. Now, that's not a requirement, but as somebody who has read the exam and has been a grader for it, it is just so much easier for me if what I'm looking at in that video is what they're talking about in the written response. So try to keep it consistent. Tell your students what you're going to talk about in that written response. When you talk about test cases, I want you to show those as your inputs in the project video. Okay. Now, it is an all or nothing game. Okay. Now, the video, it's usually good. The video can't be longer than a minute. I don't want to go into the nitty gritty details because you guys can see that in the AP digital portfolio. Um, okay, the program. What does it need to have? And I always like to talk about this, the program requirements. Okay, right here, program requirements. Okay, the program needs to have input, output, but it's pretty basic. It needs to have sequence selection and iteration all in the procedure. So it needs to have an algorithm. There needs to be a procedure. All right. But the procedure needs to be able to pass a parameter through it. And then the other requirement is a list. but the list has to actually be used in the program. See, a few years ago, the kids would actually like have this loophole. And as long as they used the list, we'd have to give them credit for it. It didn't matter what the list did. So if it was like some game and the list just said, type in your name at the beginning and it collected your name, all right? It would say that, but then it never did anything with the name. Nothing. It just sat in the list and it was never used in the program again for anything. We'd have to give them credit. That doesn't count anymore because in the written response, when they talk about the list, they have to talk about how can the program be written differently if they didn't use the list. So these questions are really difficult that they're going to have to answer, not these first three, the next three. All right. So the requirements, I mean, that's pretty much it. We'll review it in a minute when we go over the first assignment we have for your students. Shouldn't the answer to that be that the program can't work without the list? No, Taylor, the answer would be that, well, you know what? We'll see some samples of the question. All right. So we'll see that in a minute. So just, I know what you mean. Without the list, it wouldn't work. But no, they want you to be able to tell them like how the program would have to be written differently or how it would have to be function differently if the list wasn't being used. All right. Just to let you know, one of my buddies, Jeff Gray at the University of Alabama, he writes the procedure question every year, and 12,000 kids get it incorrect. And he's actually pretty proud of that because he wants the test to be rigorous. They can use AI to write the program. I'm going to show you how to do that at the end of today. Now, if they can use AI to write the program, how are we supposed to test their knowledge on coding? That's when we get to the written response. So College Board's thought process is we don't care who writes the program if they pair up with ChatGPT, because it's not important apparently who writes the code. It's important if the student can read the code, explain the code, and debug the code. So if they use AI to write this great program, they're still going to have to go study it. They're going to have to figure out how it works. And then if we take away portions of it, how it would function differently. So that's the whole thought process behind what we're talking about here. All right, so let's just take a look here. All right, they need to have a procedure, and the procedure has to have sequence, selection, and iteration. And that's a change too from a few years ago. It used to be the algorithm needs to have iteration and selection in it. Okay. Now it's the procedure has to contain that. So, like we use Scratch. So we have to do a make a block, right? That they can pass a parameter through. And now underneath the make a block has to be the sequence, selection, and iteration, not where we're calling the procedure in the algorithm. All right. Has to have that if statement in there as well. Okay. And then the list. Okay. So, and this gets back to what I was telling you, like they don't get the point if the list was not used in the operation of the program. All right. So those are the first three rows. Now, here is where the students do poorly. All right. On the algorithm development, error and testing, and data and procedural abstraction. Now, 2A and 2C, I can't control really. Okay. Your students are going to have to study that algorithm. But as the teacher, 2B is always weird to me. Why are we struggling with 2B? Why are kids getting 0.20? Okay. And the reason I think gets back to us as the teachers, we're not explaining it clearly enough. 2B is what I've already kind of Jedi mind tricked you into thinking with my temperature analysis example with the number and then the word dog. Okay. That is 2B, errors in testing. What are you going to type in to your algorithm to show that the program works or doesn't work? Right? And I think where teachers get confused and students get confused is for some reason they think that when they hear errors in testing that these are supposed to be included in their program for some reason. I mean, that's not the thing here. We're just using test cases, parameters that we're going to pass to our procedure to show our program doing different things. So this is why 2B is always troubling to me. 2A and 2C, my students are on their own. They got to study their algorithm and learn to answer these questions, which we'll do in a deep dive next week. I'll show you how to answer 2A and 2C using AI, and then how your students can use AI to really boost their knowledge. And then on testing day, go in there with really well rehearsed answers that they have worked on for their questions. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. College Board just doesn't want them using AI on the actual exam. All right, so 2B would be the two test call cases, 78 degrees and dog. When they type in 78 degrees, the program should run. When they type in dog, it doesn't. And that's what happens. Okay. And that's what they talk about. So that is why I like to start here with the chief reader report. We're going to come back to it next week. Everything I talked about is kind of highlighted here on the left-hand side of the assignment in my top 10 list. And I used to have a really bad GIF or GIF, however you like to pronounce it, of David Letterman here doing a top 10 list. But now I have my recording of Mark and me last week talking about exactly what I just reviewed with you all. All right. So I wanted to start with the chief reader report. It's a good place to begin. All right. Next up, this is what our UTeach Create Performance Test module looks like. And every single one of these assignments I'm going to share with you as a PDF next week. One PDF will be the student printouts for you to give your students, and the other one will actually be the teacher one. It'll include our teacher lesson plans and all the other things that we include. So you'll get this. But if you follow our instructions, you can facilitate from start to finish the entire Create Performance task in anywhere from 18 to 21 class periods. Now, it's really a lot quicker than that. And the reason I say that is because this exam day prep for the written response section, CT7 is the assignment number. This is done a week before the exam or 2 weeks before the actual multiple choice part. Before they have to go in and do the written response, they do these assignments. So really doing the create performance test, CT1, all the way through to CT6, getting everything in the digital portfolio that they need. I mean, you can do that in 15 class periods. And remember, 50-minute class periods is what our pacing guide is. It's okay. You can, you could do however many minutes you want for the create performance test, but it has to be in the classroom. It has to be class time. It can't be like, hey, it's going to be spring break. You're going to do it over spring break. It's got to be in the classroom. Now, for UTeach, it's pretty simple. I review CT1, 2, and 3 with my students the way I'm going to review them with you guys. And then they do assignments 4, 5, and 6 on their own. And during 4, 5, and 6, they do everything. Okay. They write their program. They do practice written response questions so they know what to upload to the digital portfolio. We have videos showing them how to make the video, how to take the code snippets, how to make a PDF of their code to upload to the digital portfolio. We show them how to do everything because you're not. You're not supposed to show them a thing. You're supposed to be doing nothing. The only technical support you're supposed to be providing is the computer turned on? Is your mouse plugged in? If they're still using a mouse. So what I'm going to do is today I'm going to walk you through CT1, 2, and 3 in a really condensed, quick way, the way I would with my students. All right. And then they would go and start doing the program. And then at the very end, I'm going to show you how I use ChatGPT with the students that I work with and the teachers I work with to write their program. Yeah. I mean, they're allowed to collaborate on the code with another student. Well, what's the difference whether they use ChatGPT or they use the smartest kid in the class, Steve? Okay. So let's get started. CT1. Okay. This actually would be two 50-minute class periods where you go over basically everything there is to go over with your students for the create performance task. All right. And the first thing you'll notice is we begin by reviewing with the students the digital portfolio. Like, I'm not going to review that with you guys. I'm going to start with the next one. But this first one is where we explain to our students everything's going to go into the digital portfolio. We already made an AP Classroom account. We already have a class for the digital portfolio then, but that's where you're going to be submitting this create performance test stuff. All right. Now, we get into the next one. This is where we talk to our students about the actual create performance task. what they need to do for the task. Whoa, sorry about that. My chat box just blew up and came the size of my screen. All right, so what do they need to do? Let me collapse the screen down. This is all taken right out of the CED, all right? But they need to do the following three things. They need to have a minimum of 9 hours of class time to complete the following. They need to make a program code. Now, notice right here. Over here, we have two little stick figures from the game of life. That means they're allowed to collaborate with somebody else, says it right here, or AI. Then all by themselves, they have to do the video part and the code segments for the PPR and the digital portfolio. So notice, yes, they can work with another student or AI for the actual code, but then each one of those students has to do their own video and their own PPR. Okay. Now, the students don't need to submit different code segments. Okay. It's not like they need to have two procedures and they need to have two lists. They can talk about the same list and the same procedure because they're making their own video and they're submitting their own PPR. Okay. So now, what has to be in the program code? I told you this already. It needs to have some sort of input. It needs to have a list. It needs to have a procedure. That procedure needs to be able to handle one or more parameters. And then the algorithm in the procedure, you see it says right here, selected procedure needs to contain sequence selection and iteration. The student needs to make calls to that procedure. That's the test cases. Okay, those are the calls. And then they have to have instructions for an output. Okay, whether that's going to be a list, printing out a text, doing some sort of image, whatever it is. Okay, so that's what needs to be in their program. That hardly sounds like an advanced game. Okay, that sounds a lot like to me what I'm going to show you in a minute. It sounds like something that uses a data set. Sounds like some sort of inventory program, some sort of quiz game, some sort of calculator, something very basic. That's what it sounds like to me. All right, so the video has to show the input, the output, and like I said, it should be showing whatever the test cases they're going to talk about in the written response. Whatever the calls are to that procedure, whatever those parameters are that they put in there, that's what they should be showing. Now, this part, they can't mention anything about themselves or their school that they go to. You'd be surprised, 680 teachers grading this, your student's work pops up right in front of you, and you're like, what are the odds? All right. And they can't use voice narration. It's not fair to the students who don't speak English as a primary language. So they can use subtitles, but they can't use their voice. So captions are encouraged, subtitles are encouraged, no voice narration allowed. Just to let you know, if they do a voice narration, um, the the graders can't hear it. They actually tell them to turn it down. All right. The other stuff the digital portfolio will reject: wrong file format, no more than 1 minute, and incorrect file size. Okay, all that stuff, um, we can't control. They won't accept it. All right, and then what goes on this PPR? The PPR is what they have to submit to the digital portfolio. Why is it important? This is the piece of paper that is going to be printed out on testing day for them to be able to answer their written response statement. And you, as the teacher, need to write this down. If there's nothing else you listen to, please listen to this. The PPR cannot have any notes on it whatsoever. Okay. Um, it seems a little weird, right? Because we always tell our students to put notes in your code, put code comments in there. Tell me what it means. Okay. They discourage, no, well, that's not entirely true. They don't allow them to have any code comments on the picture that they submit of the list or the procedure. Okay. If there's any code comment in the list or the procedure code snippet pictures, they will not be allowed to partake in the written response portion on the day of the test. They just won't. They'll sit there. Okay. Now, they can put code comments just in the PDF of their entire program code, but I wouldn't do it. There's no need to do it. All right. They will not be able to view the entire program code on testing day. That's just for the grader. All right. Believe it or not, we as the people grading the exam never see the student's code. It's very rare. We watch the video, we watch the response to their questions, and then if there's some sort of discrepancy or we're really struggling, we'll go look at the code that they submitted as the PDF. All right, so that's important, man. Tell them not to use code comments. When they're submitting those code snippets in the PPR, it'll disqualify them from even answering the written response questions on testing day. Okay, so that's important. All right, now, in our assignments, we walk the students through how to do this, how to take a picture of the procedure, the list, where it's called, and then what to upload. Okay, so this is where we review with our students in this first assignments what's expected of them. And then we go through the scoring guidelines with them. I'm going to review the scoring guidelines in more detail with you next week. All right. The one, because we started doing it with the chief reader report, but after we see some sample programs, then next week we'll grade them on this scoring rubric, and we'll see, do they get the point? Because here's all you need to know: it's an all or nothing game. There's no partial credit. They either do everything that's required or they get none of the points. So if their program has a list and it has a procedure, but that procedure doesn't have iteration in it, they get 0 points. Okay. So that's what we like to hit home with our students, but I'll talk more with you guys about this next week. All right. So CT1's a long assignment. It would take you 2 class periods to review with your students. Now, this next assignment, these are all the review samples that have been released by College Board, all right, and the ones that UTeach has created for our teachers to use, because we wanted to make sure that our teachers had a perfect example to look at, perfect score, okay? Now, the problem is that College Board is releasing these sets of questions, but the sets of questions are answering like certain parts of the scoring guideline. I find it easier as a teacher to just have like one sample that has everything listed there that I can use as a sample for my students. So I'm just going to show you this one, and then you guys can use these with your students, project this to the front of your classroom. I'm going to keep this workshop open, excuse me, until after April 30th. So you can use, project this to your students and use this workshop even from the student view for your students. But let me show you our sample, okay? Because this really is where we're going to start talking about what is a good project to do. This was created by one of my teachers, Lauren, who teaches in Maui. Yes, that Maui in Hawaii. So I used to laugh because I taught in Brooklyn, New York, near the Red Hook projects, and I used to love it. But we did not get to look at palm trees, macadamia nuts, or water. But I digress. This is Lauren's sample project that he made for his students, and it was a perfect score. And then we made up the scoring commentary and the written response. But it is a contact list program. This is a perfect example of the type of program that your students should be focusing on making for the create performance task. Now, I click over here. Here's the actual program. So you can see we have Scratch embedded in Codio. All right, if I hit play here, it says click A to add content. Okay, E to check for the typos. There's a number A3. Click S to sort by first name. And then here's our click C to see who lives in the town. All right, but this is the program. Okay, here is the actual program. Here is the video that they made of the program running. It's 55 seconds long, and it's going to be showing a demo of what the program does. Here is a PDF of the program code. And remember, I told you the program code can have just, this is what this section does, and this is what this section does. All right. But the other ones can't. Okay. Whenever you put on this PPR, can't have code comments. Okay. So notice on the PPR, no code comments. Okay. And we have our code snippets here. Notice we have sequence, selection, and iteration underneath the procedure, underneath the make a block. Here's where the procedure is being called. It's going to pass the answer through as that's what's being passed through the parameter that's being passed through the procedure, I should say. All right. So this is the program. All right. And here's the written response. Let me go down. All right. So now you look here. What is the video doing? Here's the input. So question one, remember the students do good on this one. All right. What are you going to see? But then once we start getting into the nitty gritty, okay, the answers become a lot more difficult. Okay. This one talks about the two calls to the procedure. All right. This part is good for you guys. But then when we talk over here, the procedure, this is the question that they would have to answer to get credit. So what the procedure does. Okay, the list, this gets back to earlier, the list to iterate through is called first name. This list contains the elements. So look at the detail we're talking about here. These questions are very detailed. The answers have to be rigorously answered, right? But this is a perfect score, okay, just to throw that up there, okay? But I'm not going to go through the whole assignment, but these are all the samples that College Board has released, that UTeach does. And since in our course, we do Scratch and Python, we have all the Python samples listed here as well. And what we did was we took Lauren's Scratch project and we made it into a Python project, okay? And that way we redid the scoring summary right up here. Here's our scoring commentary. All right, we redid everything for Python. Okay, we can run the code to the program over here. Here's the video. So I want you to look at both of the samples that we have because these are good, perfect scores to show your students. Okay. Now there is a lot in showing your students, a lot of the College Board samples, which got zeros for the parts that they were trying to get the point for, because you do want to see that, but you also need to show your student really good exemplars, perfect scores as well. Okay. So that's our review sample assignment. Okay, let me close it down. Now, the next assignment would be the planning assignment. Now, our planning assignment, I'll show you guys in just a moment, okay? What I would like to do here is I'd like to segue into an assignment that I created just for this workshop. And I just gave it to my teachers recently, but it's not even in our curriculum. But basically, when your students are trying to use ChatGPT to make a create performance task, we really want them to use ChatGPT correctly. Okay. And what I mean by that is they need to write prompts so that in the end, they basically get a starter program, right? When we teach coding all the time, we give our students starter code or a starter program or even a sample program. The minute College Board allowed AI to be used on this create performance task, the shift in coding education was clear. Writing code is no longer the priority. Reading code and debugging code are going to be the priority. And that's what I try to tell my teachers, right? Even if your school locks down AI, I mean, our platform, we have right here in the bottom right-hand corner, Codio Coach, okay? Codio Coach is smart AI. It'll help your students, okay? It does three things. You see it right there. It'll summarize what they need to do on an assignment. It can explain a coding error to them, and it can provide a hint on what to do next. But it won't just tell them the answer. All right. And our students use that type of AI all year long, kind of like as exactly what it sounds, their coach. It's kind of the end of three before me. I used to always say three before me, ask three other students before you come to my desk and ask me. Now it's before you approach, ask the coach. Okay, all my students can ask Codio Coach these questions they used to ask me, and it can work them through it. So asking them to work with ChatGPT to come up with a program is what I like to demonstrate with them. All right. And that gets back to prompt writing. Okay. Now, let me make this bigger. We know that the program needs to have input, output, a list, and a procedure that passes the parameter that also contains sequence selection and iteration. Now, your students will hear you say, he said, Mr. Slobodsky said, make a contact list program. And then run to ChatGPT and say, make me a contact list program. And it will. And then your student won't know anything about that program or how it works. Now, here are really good sample prompts and sample ideas for projects that your students can do that'll be really easy for them to get a perfect score on the create performance task. Okay. So let's start with these first three. Okay. Simple calculator program. Okay. Basic quiz game. Okay. Write a basic quiz game. So it asks user 5 questions, keep track of the score, display the final score at the end. But the problem with that is I can even think of a way of making a basic quiz game that doesn't use a list. Okay. Um, Maybe a number guessing game. Okay. A simple to-do list. Basic contact book. I already showed you that. Oh, look, temperature converter. Did you think I wasn't going to throw that up there after talking about it for 45 straight minutes? A simple voting system and a basic alarm clock. And what I want to focus on is let's just focus on this basic alarm clock here. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to actually copy this prompt and go to ChatGPT and paste it in. Now, for you who haven't used ChatGPT, ChatGPT now is actually, they have a built-in IDE that opens up, as you can see here. But there you go. It built an alarm clock program. Okay. And it tells me right over here, hey, guess what? I made a simple Python program. It's a basic alarm clock. All right. But remember, okay, I need to make sure that this program is something that a 10th grade student can understand, right? That's usually the grade they're taking this course in. All right. I know that it also needs to have a procedure that passes a parameter. And I also know it needs to have a list. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT to redo that program to include these things. Okay, so right here, make sure to, and let me just get rid of instruct ChatGPT to write the program using the following. And you'll see right away, ChatGPT actually just starts redoing the code. Okay, now that looks a lot more like a program that one of my students would write. It also looks like more of a program that my students would be able to discuss. Okay. Oh no, I hit my free mark here. All right, I was not expecting that. But anyway, good thing I actually had done this basic alarm clock program earlier. Okay. So here's that program. All right. It tells the students how it works. All right. And this is just a really good way of using ChatGPT and learning how to make prompts to have your students write a program. What is the difference between what I just showed you and your student collaborating with another student, right? Sometimes if we're pairing a higher level learner with a lower level learner, I mean, the higher level learner does all the coding, all right? This is what's really cool about this program, okay? We show them how to make up this assignment. Let me make it shorter here. All right. And then the next page of this assignment is a sample of our IDE. Okay. So you can see here, our IDE is a 3-panel layout. We have a run code button right over here, and you type your code up here, and then you type what's your name down here. Okay. And that's your playground and your terminal window. Now, just to show you real quickly, if I wanted to just type up here, print, and we'll say input, and I'm typing some mistakes on purpose here. Okay, and I say, what's your age? Throw a question mark in there. All right, now run my code again. Up. It says I have an error in there. Okay, let me come back over here. Clear. Okay, what's my name? Jason. What's my age? 45. All right, now the reason I just did that, and then let's just say I want to copy this. Oops, don't want to delete it all. Let me copy and paste. So I told you earlier, one of the cool things about our IDE is it has a feature called code playback. So I can just right click, hit code playback, And now it'll play my students doing their code. All right, and you could tell right away what code I was typing by myself and then what code the student pasted in. All right, so just a really cool feature. I just wanted to show it to you. But yeah, please play around with our IDE. All right. Our courses, we don't have student fees. There is an $1,800 charge for PD and our license for the year. If you just want the license, it's only 800 bucks, but we do it by teacher and it's unlimited students. And the reason we do that is because our IDE is built in, so there's no additional fee like Replit charges. All right. And it allows you to have really cool features. All right. If I want to grade a Python assignment, I don't have to have a student share a link with me. I just go in my gradebook and open this up and do exactly what I just showed you. Look at their project and watch them typing their code. So it's a cool feature. All right. But if you want to play around with our IDE, that's why I included it right over here. And I did include what ChatGPT just cut me off from doing. And that is, I mean, here's an entire program, okay, that ChatGPT wrote for me that I can just copy and paste into my IDE over here. All right, and hit run code. And there we go. Here's my program. Okay. And the cool thing is I always like to say to ChatGPT after it makes the program with the student, can you please explain the program in more detail? All right. And then it starts spitting off stuff that isn't really relevant to what my students need. And then I say, can you please explain the list in more detail? And then I explain, what could I do differently if I wasn't allowed to use a list while coding the program? And then I ask it, explain the procedure. And how could the program be written differently if I didn't use the procedure? And that's what I put over here. Okay. Notice the explanations that it's giving. By doing an assignment like this with your students, you're actually helping your students um, create like a study guide. All right. See, does the 800 fee allow access to CSP? I'm sorry, CSA. All right. No, each course is $800. It's not both courses. Are these are in the code and these are in the code? Yeah, these are all in Codio. Yeah. Sorry, the chat box got messed up, so I wasn't able to see it. Sorry, it took me a minute to respond. But yeah, so basically, I don't see anything wrong, and neither does College Board, with using AI to help your students write the program, to help your students come up with really good answers. And then these would be this would be their study guide. This is what they would need to study so that when they go in on testing day and they get their PPR handed to them, hopefully there's no notes on it, because if there are or there code comments, they won't print it for them. But they get it printed out and now they can sit down and answer these questions. All right. So please, okay, do not have like this antagonist, protagonist view on AI. Let's utilize AI and show our students how to use it in the right way and how to use it to create their programs. All right. And then how to intelligently discuss their programs afterwards. All right. So this is pretty much what I wanted to just cover in this first session for this week. Now, let me very quickly switch back to my teacher mode. And I am going to enable for everybody the asynchronous module. So if you would like to get 5 hours of credit and a certificate for it, for doing this workshop, which is a great deal, you would need to complete the following assignments right over here, and not all of them. I'll explain which ones you need to complete. Okay. Everyone needs to complete, well, not, I'm sorry. If you want the 5 hours for the certificate, you need to complete CT3. And let me show you CT3. CT3 would be the last assignment in our create task module that I do with the students before I give them those 9 hours to do what you're about to do during the asynchronous module. And this is the planning document. It helps the student plan out their thoughts, but more importantly, it allows me as the teacher to not talk to the student, but be able to go into this document to see, hey, what is the student doing? What are their ideas? And to see if they're making any mistakes. You can't give individual feedback on the create task, but you can sure make group announcements. So if you see, 5 kids in your class are using a procedure, that doesn't pass a parameter. You can say, hey guys, remember, use the right procedure in the task. Make sure you use one that passes a parameter. You can't say, Joey, make sure you do this. Okay. But as we scroll through the assignment, that's the purpose of it. They would talk about the purpose, the input, what the output is, what's going in the list, what's the procedure requirements. All right. If they work with somebody who they're working with, if it's AI, let them say it's AI. They need to cite that they worked with ChatGPT or whatever else, with Grok, whatever they worked with, they need to say, I worked in collaboration on my code with this platform. Okay. They get in trouble for plagiarism if they don't do that. They need to cite that they used AI. All right. And then this sheet over here, they can do, or you don't have to do with your students. It's a collaborative review. It would be like two students swapping this and then saying, give me feedback on my idea. Do you think it's attainable? Do you think it's too much? Do you think I'll get all the points on the rubric? And that's what this assignment is. So it's important for you to do this assignment if you're planning on doing the rest of the workshop. And that would be assignment 4, 5, and 6. So if you want to get credit for the 5 hours, you'll be doing assignments 4, 5, and 6. And let me just show you this. There's 4, 5, 6, and then there's 4.1, 5.1, 6.1. I want you to choose one of those blocks. If you want to use Scratch, do CT4, CT5, and CT6. If you want to use Python, do 4.1, 5.1, and 6.1. And what these assignments will do, and I'll demonstrate them for you next week, is it takes you through. CT4 is where your students do all of their work. Okay. Um, CT5 is a written response preparing your students for what is the procedure that I'm going to upload to the digital portfolio? What is the list that I'm going to upload? What is the input? What's the output? All those questions get answered again. And then CT6 is where they upload everything to the digital portfolio. So that's why I enabled this module for this week. If you'd like to get the certificate, if you don't want the certificate, go through it, take a look at it. They're really good assignments. Like I said, next week, I'll be giving you a PDF of everything we did, of all the modules, so that you'll be able to do it with your students. You'll also get access to the sample materials. So you'll be able to see our CSP course, CSA course, and cyber sample materials from the teacher view. And I'll show you teacher view next week. I didn't want to do it this week. You'll be able to see our teacher lesson plans and all that. I know the PDFs are all for next week. Those are for next week. If for some reason you can't attend next week, just shoot me an email, let me know, and I can give you the links a little bit early. If they work with a classmate, how do they cite that? Do they simply say they worked with Joe's student to develop the code? Yeah, no, they don't have to cite the peers. They just have to say that they worked with another student in their class. Just say that. Okay. That's all they have to say. They're allowed to work with somebody else. Just do it just to be safe. Don't ever mention names. And if they worked with AI, make sure they cite that they worked with AI. All right. So that is all that I got for you guys for this week. Please look through the asynchronous week, even if you don't want to do the assignments. I totally understand. About 10% of the people who sign up for this workshop are actually doing it to get the certificate. So if all you're doing is watching the recordings, that's fine. You're pretty much in the majority. I'll be sending out the recording this evening. I'll be sending you another reminder next week about the Zoom session. Okay. And yeah, I want to thank you all for hanging with me this week. I'll hang on the call if anybody has any questions right now. So thank you. And I hope to see everyone again next week. Thanks, everybody.